Hello, I'm James A. Zimoha and you're watching A News. Let's see your headlines. U.S. President Donald Trump said American forces carried out major strikes inside Iran, describing the situation as a regime change. Israel expands its military buffer zone inside southern Lebanon to prevent Hezbollah rocket attacks. And Trump eases Cuba sanctions, allowing a Russian tanker to deliver needed crude oil to the island. U.S. President Donald Trump says Iran is undergoing a genuine regime change, describing the country's new leadership as very reasonable. He also stated that American forces have carried out strikes on multiple targets inside Iran, calling the action a major military operation.
U.S. President Donald Trump says American forces have struck multiple targets inside Iran, describing it as a major military operation. He said many long sought-after targets had been destroyed, but did not provide details.
So we've had very good negotiations today with Iran, getting a lot of the things that they should have given us a long time ago. We'll see how it works out, but they're very good, moving along very nicely. They've destroyed a lot of additional targets today. The Navy's gone, the Air Force is gone, we know that. But we destroyed many targets today. It was a big day. And we are negotiating with them directly and indirectly.
Trump's comments point to a dual approach, continuing negotiations with Iran, while at the same time expanding military pressure. He also said Iran is allowing oil shipments through the Strait of Hormuz, with around 20 tankers expected to pass as what he described as a gesture during talks. Trump also suggested that the situation inside Iran is shifting, claiming progress is happening faster than expected.
But we've had regime change, if you look already, because the one regime was decimated, destroyed, they're all dead. The next regime is mostly dead. And the third regime, we're dealing with different people than anybody's dealt with before. It's a whole different group of people. So I would consider that regime change. And frankly, they've been very reasonable.
On the ground, the situation is intensifying. Explosions have been reported across Tehran, with air defense systems activated. Targets reportedly include Tehran's Mehrabad airport, a petrochemical facility in Tabriz, and other sites, including residential areas. Iran has responded with drone and missile attacks targeting Israel and areas hosting US forces across the region. The conflict is now spreading beyond a single front. Iranian military officials say they are ready to respond decisively if threats turn into direct action. US media reports say the Pentagon is preparing for possible ground operations involving special forces and conventional troops. Trump has also told the Financial Times that the US could attempt to seize Karg Island, a key oil export hub off Iran's coast. The island is considered a critical part of Iran's economy, and analysts say taking control of it could significantly reduce Tehran's oil revenues and impact its ability to sustain military operations. Thousands of US troops are already in the region, including around 5,000 Marines. Reports suggest up to 10,000 more could be deployed, expanding Washington's military options.
The Iran war is beginning to disrupt global trade, with Asia's used car exports among the sectors affected. Shipments now face delays, rerouting, and rising costs.
The Iran war is disrupting used car exports across Asia, with dealers in Japan, South Korea, and Sri Lanka facing delays and rising costs. Shipments bound for the Middle East have been stalled or rerouted, as congestion and uncertainty affect major ports and shipping lanes. Exporters say hundreds of vehicles have been held at sea or diverted to alternative ports, while some shipments have been sent back. Dealers in Sri Lanka report delays of more than 500 cars, as vessels struggle to dock due to congestion caused by diverted cargo. The Middle East remains a key market, accounting for a significant share of exports, and also acting as a transit hub for vehicles heading to regions such as Eastern Europe.
I think the biggest challenge was the exports to UAE. UAE has been the largest market for Japanese used vehicles, which consists of 15% of the total export volume. And for particularly to our company, I think we have about 50 luxury cars and supercars stuck in the midway. Some cars have been offloaded at the Sri Lankan Hambantota port. some was offloaded in the Hanshin port in China. And some of our container shipments were recalled back to Japan.
Japan and South Korea exported a combined $19 billion worth of used cars last year, with Japan accounting for slightly more than half. More than a third of South Korea's 883,000 exports were destined for the Middle East. In South Korea, exporters say the disruption has paralyzed their trading network, with vehicles piling up in storage yards and ports. Shipping costs are rising, containers are harder to secure, and payments from buyers are being delayed.
The Middle East is our most critical market. From there, we expand into Turkey and Europe. Even if we cannot reach places such as Kosovo, Turkish buyers in the Middle East act as a bridge. But now, that network is largely paralyzed.
The Strait of Hormuz, a key route for shipments linked to Dubai, remains a major bottleneck, raising concerns of prolonged disruption if the conflict continues.
The UN nuclear watchdog chief is calling for urgent talks after strikes on Iran's nuclear sites. Rafael Grossi, the International Atomic Energy Agency chief, says diplomacy is the only way to resolve tensions over Iran's nuclear program. He warned that the Bushehr nuclear plant has been on alert due to nearby military activity, though it remains unharmed. Grossi stressed nuclear facilities must never be targeted. He added that the dispute, ongoing for more than 2 decades, cannot be resolved through military means and requires renewed negotiations. Israel is intensifying its campaign near the Lebanese border, expanding its military presence in the south as cross-border fighting with Hezbollah continues. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the aim is to reshape the security situation in the north.
The situation along Israel's northern frontier remains volatile, with continued exchanges of fire raising concerns of a wider escalation. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says he has ordered an expansion of Israel's military buffer zone inside southern Lebanon as fighting along the northern border intensifies. Speaking from Israel's Northern Command on Sunday, Netanyahu said the move is aimed at pushing Hezbollah forces further from the border and preventing attacks on Israeli territory.
In Lebanon, I have just instructed to further expand the existing security zone in order to decisively thwart the threat of invasion and to push anti-tank missile fire away from our border. It must be understood that Nasrallah built up a large force here. He believed that with this force, he would destroy us. Well, we eliminated Nasrallah. We eliminated thousands of Hezbollah militants. And above all, we eliminated the enormous threat of 150,000 missiles and rockets that were intended to devastate Israel's cities. But Hezbollah still retains a residual capability to launch rockets at us. And what I discussed today with the commanders here are ways to remove that threat as well.
Israeli troops were seen positioned along the Lebanese border on Sunday as operations continue in the area. The expansion of the so-called security zone marks a further escalation in Israel's ground operations in southern Lebanon, which began earlier this month. The developments come amid rising regional tensions linked to the broader Israel-Iran confrontation, with Hezbollah operating as one of Tehran's key allies.
Spain has closed its airspace to U.S. planes involved in strikes on Iran, expanding an earlier ban on the use of joint military bases. Defense Minister Margarita Robles said Madrid will not support operations linked to the conflict. The move forces U.S. aircraft to reroute around Spain, though emergency flights remain exempt. Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez has been one of the most vocal opponents of the U.S. and Israeli attacks on Iran. Syrian President Ahmed al-Shara is in Berlin for talks aimed at strengthening ties with Germany as his country enters a new phase after years of conflict. During the visit, Germany has signaled support for Syria's post-war recovery as Damascus seeks to rebuild ties with Europe and advance plans for reconstruction.
German police locked down Berlin's government district on Monday as Syrian President Ahmed al-Shara visits the capital under heavy security. The measures follow reported assassination threats, with tight protection around key locations. Al-Shara met Foreign Minister Johann Wadephul and Chancellor Friedrich Merz, with talks focusing on Syria's political transition and the return of migrants. Wadephul said Germany stands with Syria, while Economy Minister Katharina Reiche highlighted potential cooperation in energy, construction and technology. Later in the day, at a joint press conference, Merz called the fall of dictatorship in Syria a historic moment and said many Syrians are now looking to return home. He urged Damascus to build an inclusive state, stressing that stability and economic growth will be key to rebuilding, and said Syria can count on Germany's support.
Mr. President, you are working under extremely difficult conditions to build a better future for your country. On behalf of the entire German government, I explicitly encourage you to create space in the new Syria for all Syrians, regardless of their religion, ethnic background or gender. In this spirit, Mr. President, you can count on Germany's support on the path towards a better future. We discussed this in detail in our bilateral meeting.
Speaking at the same press conference, President Ahmed al-Shara thanked Germany for its support and outlined key steps for rebuilding Syria.
Today we discuss several key issues, most notably reconstruction, Syrian refugees, and regional security and stability. Our discussions were based on important shared understandings, foremost among them that reconstruction begins with providing the basic foundations of life, including energy, education, and healthcare. In this context, we are pleased to crown today's talks with the signing of a strategic memorandum of understanding with Siemens Energy, a company that remained active at the Deir Ali power plant throughout the years of the Syrian revolution. Today, we are restoring this partnership in its official framework as a step towards bringing electricity back to Syria.
The visit highlights growing engagement between Germany and Syria as reconstruction efforts begin to take shape.
Britain is considering deploying a Royal Navy vessel to the Strait of Hormuz as concerns grow over maritime security and the disruption of one of the world's most critical oil routes. Zainab Farizadeh has more.
Britain is preparing to deploy a Royal Navy evacuation vessel to the Strait of Hormuz, equipped with autonomous drones designed to detect and clear sea mines, according to the Sunday Times. RFA Lime Bay, an amphibious landing ship with capacity for up to around 500 troops and onboard medical and defensive systems, is currently undergoing maintenance in Gibraltar and had been scheduled for training exercises in the Mediterranean. However, contingency plans authorized by Defense Secretary John Healey could see the vessel redirected to the Gulf as part of efforts to secure one of the world's most critical shipping routes. The ship is expected to be fitted with advanced mine-clearing technology, including underwater drones and remotely operated systems, allowing it to act as a mothership for seabed scanning and disposal operations. A defense source said no final decision has been taken, describing the move as a preventative step to give ministers options if action is required to restore the flow of commercial shipping. Royal Navy mine hunting drones already in the region are also being considered for deployment as part of discussions around a wider multinational effort to reopen the strait. The development comes amid a growing international pressure to act. Meanwhile, the United States has increased its military presence in the region with an amphibious assault ship carrying thousands of personnel arriving in recent days. The escalation follows weeks of conflict involving the US, Israel, and Iran, with continued missile and drone attacks reported across the region. The Strait of Hormuz has been severely disrupted since early March, contributing to a sharp rise in global oil prices and leaving vessels stranded. Around 20 million barrels of oil normally pass through the route each day, making it one of the most strategically important energy corridors in the world. Any deployment of British assets is likely to depend on how the security situation develops. Zeynep Ferizadeh, A-News, Manchester, United Kingdom.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is visiting Jordan for talks focused on security cooperation as Kyiv strengthens defense ties across the Middle East. Zelensky said discussions with King Abdullah will center on regional security and coordination with partners, particularly in countering drone threats. The visit comes amid heightened tensions between Israel, the US, and Iran, which has triggered missile and drone strikes. The trip follows recent visits to Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Qatar as Kyiv looks to deepen defense cooperation beyond Europe. US President Donald Trump says he has no objection to countries sending oil to Cuba, signaling a shift in US policy after months of restricting shipments to the island. His comments come as a Russian crude oil tanker expected to deliver a major shipment is nearing Cuba. Until now, Washington had effectively blocked oil flows to the island in an effort to pressure the government in Havana.
If a country wants to send some oil into Cuba right now, I have no problem with it. Doesn't help him. If he loses one boatload of oil, that's all it is. It's fine. If he wants to do that, and if other countries want to do it, it doesn't bother me much. It's not going to have an impact. Cuba's finished. They have a bad regime. They have very bad and corrupt leadership. And whether or not they get a boat of oil, it's not going to matter. I'd prefer letting it in, whether it's Russia or anybody else, because the people need heat and cooling and all of the other things that you need.
Now to space news. NASA is preparing to send astronauts back towards the moon for the first time in more than 5 decades, marking a major step in its Artemis program. Here's more.
NASA is preparing to launch Artemis 2, its first crewed mission to the moon in more than 50 years. 4 astronauts will travel on a 10-day journey around the moon and back, going farther into space than any human mission before.
The main goal of Artemis 2 is for the first time to fly crew. So we're flying astronauts on this mission, and we're going to take them and we're going to fly around the moon and back. So this will be the first time we've flown crew out to the moon since 1972.
After launch, the Orion spacecraft will spend about 24 hours in Earth orbit, where critical life support systems will be tested before heading deeper into space. Once confirmed, engines will fire, sending the crew on a trajectory towards the moon. They will fly around the far side, using the moon's gravity to swing back towards Earth.
While we're at the moon, we're going to take images and look at the far side of the moon. We're going to take our astronauts farther than any human has ever been from Earth before, so that we'll break the record from Apollo.
On board, astronauts will run experiments on human health, radiation exposure, and how crews live and work in deep space. The mission will end with a splashdown in the Pacific Ocean, where recovery teams will bring the crew back to shore. The crew includes 3 NASA astronauts and 1 Canadian, underlining the program's international partnership. Artemis 2 will not land on the moon, but it is a critical step towards future missions that aim to return humans to the lunar surface later this decade.
After the break, we look at the terrifying possibility that the Iran conflict is dragging the world into a nuclear age. We'll be right back. Welcome back to A News. The regional conflict has entered a volatile new phase following Prime Minister Netanyahu's directive to push the IDF deeper into southern Lebanon to fundamentally change the face of the Middle East. Meantime, a sobering new report from Bloomberg warns that the collapse of deterrence with Iran may be the catalyst for a global nuclear arms race not seen in decades. Joining us to analyze this high-stakes development is Lamis Gidid, political analyst in Lisbon, Portugal. Thank you for joining us, Lamis.
Thank you for having me.
Now, a Bloomberg report says we are entering what they call a new nuclear age because of this war. Is that because Iran is closer to a bomb or because traditional deterrence is no longer working?
I think both cases could be applied in answering such a question. Of course, the whole war, the whole initiation of this war is to destroy Iran's capacity of having a nuclear weapon. This is first, and of course now we are facing an untraditional war that everything is used today. Two powers that are not really equal of their standards, of the mean they are used, of the weapons they are using. So, and all methods that America and Israel thought that might topple the regime or take this war or win this war did not work until today. And this is why everybody is afraid of any nuclear option that we might be facing very soon. May the sky will not allow this.
Now, speaking about nuclear options, there are also concerns that U.S. allies like Poland and South Korea are also rethinking their own security. Is the U.S. nuclear umbrella weakening or simply changing?
I think here we are talking about a bigger chess game and a bigger war that concerns so many other countries. It's a security war, it's war on borders, it's war on water, on ports, so everybody is concerned. And no doubt that after this war, many of the allies of the American in the Middle East first and in the world start questioning if they are supposed to depend completely on the American support, on the American protection, or they might go for another source of protection. And this is why we see that the Europeans are very careful in not engaging in this war until today, and Europeans are the first allies of the United States. So I think all countries in the whole region are concerned with this war. Of course, the whole world also, because this war is going to be an economic world, and it's war. And we are also facing a new map in the world, in the region, and South Korea is being involved. China, Japan is preparing something in the background. So there are so many concerns around what's happening today.
Now, there's been talks about strikes on Iran's nuclear sites in Natanz and Fordo. When does a conventional attack risk triggering a wider nuclear or radiological crisis?
Yeah, you know, just to summarize the whole thing very quickly, because we cannot go into so much details now, but this war is very essential for Iran. It's the war that's been preparing for since more than 20 years, and the fears today, I don't think it's coming from of using nuclear weapons. Presently, it's not from Iran, and all of us, we know that they do not have the nuclear weapon, but they have the capacity to build this nuclear weapon very soon. The fears today is that Israel will go very aggressively against Iran and might be using or might be attacking nuclear facilities. Not even the American. I'm not sure they could go to such scenarios, the American today, but I'm afraid that the Israeli might push to the limits, as they are doing since few years now. And the Iranians are so well prepared for such a scenario, and this will not be a win for anyone in Iran, not anyone in the Gulf, and not anyone in Israel itself. and we know so much how much damage has been done in the cities of Israel, in Tel Aviv itself, and its capacity to respond and its capacity to protect its people. Because as I've read an information prior to this interview, that 11% only of the Israeli has some kind of basements where they could protect if any attack could be conducted against Iran. And I think if Israel thinking to do any harm to the Iranian facilities, which is a scenario, as I said, that is being well studied by the Iranians today, Iran will respond, and it will respond on the same level as they do always. They are not the one who are escalating, but they respond on the same scale when escalations happen.
Now let's tie in some regional players into this equation. We're also hearing discussions in Washington about a possible Saudi nuclear deal. Does this war increase the chances of a wider nuclear race in the region?
No doubt it's one of the main fears in the whole region, that this will open the door for more countries engaged in having nuclear weapons, and mainly the main big countries, Saudi and Turkey, Sunni countries. So, of course, it might open the race for nuclear arms in the whole region. And this is a very, very delicate point that we all fear, of course, not only, and the world in general. Now what we know that Saudi Arabia and the Emirates has announced entering the war today, which already an escalation that Iran answered this escalation by the Houthi themselves, that are starting some kind of operation and engaging after a few hours in this war. And this might risk also some more troubles on Bab al-Mandab, also not only in Hormuz Strait, and this will affect the whole international economy. And we are talking about so many years to recover after, if escalations continues as it's happening in the time being.
Now, I just want to hold you on that. If this conflict weakens the nuclear non-proliferation system, what does global security look like in the next few years from your perspective?
Yeah, a very difficult question to answer. Frankly, we are just now in the middle of a storm, and nobody, not even America itself, can predict the future. For the time being, nobody knows where we are going. And I mean, this is the most frightening scenarios, I mean, for all of us, because even we, the observers, when we see that absolutely it's a war that is based on some kinds of illusions, because it's a war that nobody was preparing to get in, not even America itself. And with so much data that was provided to the American leaders that this war will take few days, and I think this was one of the biggest mistake, you know. I think this war with Iran was America has underestimated the capacities of the Iranian of fighting their own battle and the battle of the Iranian nations now, because it in a way it worked against all the plans that was prepared by the United Nations and Israel to topple the regime. Now more and more we see that the Iranian people, they are one united nation, they feel threatened, and they have their own vision for the whole region now, not only for themselves, they have a vision for who will control the Hormuz Strait, they have a vision for the security in the Gulf region, and they have also their own plans to be now an emerging power in the whole Middle East, and this will change the game, the political game that might play in Western Asia.
Now, I was going to ask you this question, but you already touched briefly on it. Now, there are claims of cracks within Iran's leadership. Are these strikes weakening the system or strengthening support for it internally?
You know, we have a say that when war starts, truth is the first victim. And I think everybody is doing his own propaganda. I mean, we saw it with all the recent wars that happened. And we know how media played a big role and how misinformation also was conducted in all wars. So, I'm hearing both camps, and I see that frankly, I don't see any cracks in the Iranian on the Iranian front. On the contrary, I think they were they reacted quite calm, and it's like they were really well prepared for even all the assassination that happened first. And then the surprise came when the whole nation, when Iran now is opposing one of the biggest war of its recent history, the whole Iranian people are in a way united. I'm not speaking about the militarized opposition. I'm speaking about the people. And of course, you know, when it now to the leadership, I think when we are assassinating all leaderships that were moderate, they were ready to compromise, they were a little bit ready to negotiate, we are pushing the whole nation into confrontation and the whole regime somehow into another type of confrontation. So I believe I would not agree completely with what you mentioned regarding this fraction.
All right, let's turn to Lebanon before we wrap up this interview. Israel is expanding its security zone. In practical terms, does a deeper buffer zone improve security or create new risks?
You know, of course, I'm not a military specialist, but I think everybody knows that when we have a buffer zone already, it gives us some kind of protection. But what's the price for this buffer zone? And are we going to sustain it? Is Israel capable of sustaining this buffer zone, or they could just go for a few days and then pull back? And I mean, is there a strategy behind? Can they truly secure all this zone? I have some doubts. I mean, if they cannot secure their own cities for the time being, I mean, spreading in all directions, I think it will not work for the long run for their interest. They are now being attacked from three sides: from the Houthi, from the east, and from the north. And we know so well that Hezbollah did so well, destroyed so many tanks that Israel cannot afford losing more tanks than what it's been destroyed until today. So I think this is the issue. It's about sustaining this buffer zone, and it's about time. I mean, time will tell us, but this will lead me to another conclusion, that Israel might be ready to go for a crazy scenario such as targeting any nuclear facilities.
Now, finally, Lamiz, as the WHO reports 50 health centers closed in Lebanon due to the buffer expansion, how does Israel maintain the moral high ground of the initiative when the humanitarian cost is being used by Iran to rally the global south against the West?
Would you please tell me again what you meant? The health center in South Lebanon precisely, or in all Lebanon?
Southern Lebanon, particularly, yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
Okay.
50 health centers have been closed due to the increased buffer zone, as we just touched upon. I'm asking, how can Israel maintain the moral high ground on this subject?
Listen, I think Israel, it's been there before. I mean, what we watched in Gaza was just exceeded all humanity expectation, and all what us as observers, the world leaders, nations all over the world, we condemned, and everybody was against what was happening in Gaza, that blew up all humanitarian values and all humanitarian laws also. Of course, I think the same scenario will be repeated in southern Lebanon. I have no doubt, and they will not stop there. And they are pushing for all the limits. So, may God be with them, and we hope that this war will stop. But they are ready to go to the end, I think.
Lamis, thank you very much for sharing your time and insight with us.
Thank you so much. Have a lovely day.
After the break, we'll take a look at key stories shaping the region. Stay with us. Georgia's economic ties with the United Kingdom are expanding despite growing political tensions between Tbilisi and Western partners. A new high-level meeting highlights cooperation in investment and transport, even as London calls for stricter sanctions against Georgian officials. Our Nini Nikolashvili has more from Tbilisi.
Georgia's Minister of Economy, Mariam Kruishuli, met with UK Ambassador Gareth Edward Ward in Tbilisi on 27th March to discuss deepening economic cooperation between Georgia and the United Kingdom. According to the Ministry of Economy, the UK has been Georgia's largest source of foreign direct investment over the past 2 years, reflecting strong confidence from British businesses. The talks focused on expanding trade, developing infrastructure, and strengthening Georgia's role as a regional transit hub linking international markets. Both sides also highlighted growing air connectivity with increased passenger traffic driven by airlines such as British Airways and EasyJet. In addition, Georgian officials emphasized compliance with international sanctions in maritime transport, stating that port operations fully meet global standards. However, the meeting comes amid strained relations between Georgia and its Western partners. Tensions have escalated since the controversial 2024 elections and the ruling Georgian Duma government's decision to suspend EU accession talks and introduce legislation seen as targeting independent media and civil society. The UK has taken a firm stance, already sanctioning pro-government broadcasters and calling for further measures. A recent report by the UK House of Commons Foreign Affairs Committee urged expanded financial and travel sanctions against Georgian officials and entities accused of spreading disinformation and undermining democracy. Despite these political disagreements, economic cooperation remains active, underlining a complex relationship where strategic partnerships continue alongside increasing diplomatic pressure. Nini Nikolashvili, Tbilisi, A News.
Iran is pushing back against a set of proposals from Washington, describing them as unrealistic and lacking good faith. As tensions remain high more than a month into the conflict, lawmakers in Tehran are also considering major strategic steps. Turaj Shirlilu has more.
Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesman Esmail Baghai has said that the U.S. 15-point proposals, which were communicated to Tehran through third parties, are very radical and illogical. According to official news media, he dismissed the plan, saying talking about matters that are part of the inherent rights of Iranians is not a sign of good faith or seriousness in any diplomacy. In another development, Parliament Speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, in a message to mark the 30th day of Israel-US war on Iran, ruled out Washington's proposals as a wish list. He said that US is expressing its desires by announcing what it has not achieved in the war, seeking them through diplomacy. As the war entered its 31st day, 2 urgent draft bills were proposed at Iran's parliament over the weekend to be discussed at the plenary sessions. According to local news media, quoting senior Iranian MPs, the first draft suggests Tehran's withdrawal from the Non-Proliferation Treaty, referring to its provisions to do so under serious threats. And the second draft bill on shipping security in the Strait of Hormuz suggests excise of environment pollution taxes and charging service fees, while Iran has blocked transit of its adversaries' oil and gas tankers from the strategic waterway. Turaj Shirlilu from downtown Tehran for A News.
Pakistan's Foreign Minister Mohammad Ishaq Dar said on Sunday that Islamabad is preparing to host meaningful talks in the coming days aimed at ending the Iran conflict. This follows 2-day talks with regional foreign ministers. Here's more.
Pakistan is stepping up diplomatic efforts to ease tensions in the Middle East, hosting key regional powers in Islamabad for high-level talks on the Iran conflict. Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan and Egyptian Foreign Minister Badr Abdelati met Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif as Pakistan hosted regional counterparts for de-escalation efforts. The meeting comes as the conflict linked to US and Israeli actions against Iran continues, with the Strait of Hormuz under strain. The route is critical for global energy supplies, and disruptions have contributed to rising prices. Speaking after the consultations, Pakistan's Foreign Minister Mohammad Ishaq Dar said Islamabad is ready to host talks between Washington and Tehran.
Pakistan will be honored to host and facilitate meaningful talks between the two sides in coming days for a comprehensive and lasting settlement of the ongoing conflict.
Dar says both sides have shown confidence in Pakistan's role, with support from regional partners including Saudi Arabia and China. Earlier, Sharif also spoke with Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian as part of ongoing diplomatic outreach. Officials said proposals include steps to improve maritime security and restore shipping flows through key regional routes. In parallel, contacts at the security level are ongoing. Pakistan's army chief has been in communication with US Vice President J.D. Vance, according to a source familiar with the matter. However, diplomatic progress remains uncertain.
Afghanistan and Iran are strengthening ties as regional tensions continue to rise. In Kabul, senior officials from both sides have held talks focused on trade, diplomacy and wider developments in the region. Tamim Bahis has more.
In Kabul, Afghanistan's foreign ministry says Foreign Minister Amir Khan Muttaqi held talks with Ali Raza Bigdili, the acting head of Iranian's embassy, focusing on bilateral relations and wider regional developments. According to the ministry, Muttaqi said trade between Afghanistan and Iran is continuing to grow, describing economic ties as increasingly positive. He also praised what he called Iran's constructive position on the recent tensions between Afghanistan and Pakistan, saying Kabul wants outstanding issues between the two sides to be addressed through meaningful and sincere dialogue. The Iranian diplomat also gave a positive assessment of cooperation between Kabul and Tehran, especially in the area of trade, and said Iran's leadership is closely watching the latest situation between Afghanistan and Pakistan while supporting a peaceful solution. The meeting also turned to the wider regional conflict. Bigdili shared Tehran's position on the latest developments following what he described as war initiated by the United States and Israel. Muttaqi in turn called the situation aggression against Iran and warned that any further expansion of the conflict would be damaging for the entire region. Overall, the meeting underlined growing Afghanistan-Iran engagement, with both sides stressing trade cooperation and diplomacy as regional tensions continue. Tamim Bahis in Kabul, A News.
Tensions are rising again along the Afghanistan-Pakistan border, with both sides trading heavy fires on Sunday, days after temporary pause. Clashes hit Kunar province and Pakistan's Bajo district, involving artillery and heavy weapons. Kabul says one person was killed and 16 injured, mostly women and children. Pakistan denies targeting civilians, saying it responded to Afghan shelling. The violence follows a brief Eid al-Fitr pause and renewed tensions after last month's deadly clash. Japan is prioritizing oil supplies from Azerbaijan and Kazakhstan as risks grow around the Middle East shipping routes. Our Fariza Kalimoziner has more from Almaty, Kazakhstan.
Japan is set to prioritize oil supplies from Kazakhstan and Azerbaijan for its domestic market as concerns grow over disruptions to global flows through the Strait of Hormuz. According to the Japanese newspaper Yomiuri Shimbun, this shift is tied directly to energy security. More than 90% of Japan's crude still comes from the Middle East, so any disruption there has an immediate impact. That's why attention is turning to the Caspian region. INPEX, Japan's largest oil and gas exploration and production company, is involved in major projects here, including Kashagan in Kazakhstan, producing around 430,000 barrels a day, and Azeri-Chirag Gunashli in Azerbaijan with output of about 350,000. The crude is close in quality to Middle Eastern grades, so it can be used without major changes. Until now, most of this oil was going to Europe, and now if Japanese refiners and trading houses step in, part of those spot cargoes will be redirected to Japan as a priority. But the trade-off is distance. Tankers will have to go through the Red Sea, the Mediterranean, or all the way around Africa. That means up to 55 days from Kazakhstan and up to 50 from Azerbaijan. More than double the usual route and more expensive. At the same time, Japan is also looking beyond the region, including Central Asia, South America, and the United States. For now, US oil still makes up a small share, around 3.8% of total imports. Fariza Kalimursin, Almaty, A-News.
Central Asia is facing mountain pressure from climate change, with glaciers melting at an accelerating pace and raising concerns over long-term water security. A new UN-backed assessment highlights the scale of the risk as countries across the region move to boost cooperation and adapt to the growing environmental threat. Savil Rajapova has more from Uzbekistan.
Central Asia is stepping up efforts to address rapid glacier melt, as highlighted by United Nations report warning of unprecedented climate pressure on mountain ecosystems. Glaciers currently store around 70% of world's fresh water, supporting nearly 2 billion people, but rising temperatures are shortening winters and accelerating ice loss across the region. According to estimates by the United Nations Environment Programme, declining glacier-fed water resources could result in global economic losses of up to $4 trillion due to disruptions in agriculture, energy production, and urban water supply. The situation is particularly acute in Central Asia, where temperatures are rising almost twice as fast as the global average, increasing risks of desertification and water shortages. Regional data underscores the scale of the challenge. In Tajikistan, more than 1,000 out of 14,000 glaciers have already disappeared, while total glacier volume has declined by nearly 1/3 in recent decades. In Kyrgyzstan, glacier average has shrunk by 16% over the past 50 to 70 years. In response, Central Asian countries are strengthening cooperation on glacier monitoring and climate adaptation. A regional strategy involving Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, Tajikistan, and Uzbekistan focuses on joint data collection and coordinated policy measures as global attention to the issue grows, following the designation of 2025 as the International Year of Glacier Preservation. It is Savil Rajapova reporting from Tashkent, Uzbekistan, A-News.
All right, that's the news for this hour. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned to A-News.